Stephen thought the worst part of his drive would be staying awake. He was wrong. What waited for him in that motel was far worse, and it's still happening. I'd been on the road since 6 that morning, pushing through Kentucky, then Illinois, watching the sun climb and fall while my coffee went cold in the cup holder. My sister's wedding was in 2 days. Kansas City felt like it was on another planet, and somewhere around hour 14, my eyes started doing that thing where they'd close for just a second too long, the kind of second that gets you killed on a highway. That's when I saw it. Just past the Missouri state line, maybe 20 miles off I-70, down some county road I can't even remember the name of now. A flickering neon sign that just said Motel in red letters, half of them buzzing like angry wasps. The parking lot was mostly empty, just a couple of cars that looked like they'd been there since the Clinton administration. But I didn't care. My back was screaming, my head was pounding, and the next town with a Holiday Inn was another hour away. I pulled in just after 11. My name's Stephen J. Cardinal, and I should have kept driving. The office smelled like cigarettes and pine sol, that specific combination that told you the place was trying but failing. The clerk was maybe 60, watching some game show on a TV that had to be from the 90s. He barely looked at me when I asked for a room. $42.50, he said, sliding an actual paper registration card across the counter. Not a computer in sight. I should have known then. You got anything away from the road? I asked, signing my name. Just wanted quiet. He handed me a key, an actual metal key attached to a plastic diamond that said 14. Room 14, end of the building, quiet as a grave out there. He said it with this little smile that made something in my stomach twist. Room next to you is vacant, so you won't hear any neighbors. I thanked him and hauled my bag down the exterior corridor. The room was exactly what you'd expect. Floral bedspread that felt like sandpaper, landscape painting bolted to the wall, carpet that had seen better decades. But the bed looked clean enough, and that's all I cared about. I noticed the adjoining door right away, the kind that connects to the next room with 2 doors and deadbolts on each side. Mine was locked. I checked it twice. I was asleep in 10 minutes. The arguing woke me up at 1:47 a.m. I know because I checked my phone, squinting at the screen, trying to figure out what the hell I was hearing. It was coming from room 15, through the adjoining door. Muffled at first, just raised voices, a man and a woman. The kind of argument where you can't make out words, but you can hear the anger. I laid there, annoyed, wondering if I should bang on the wall or just try to ignore it. The clerk had said the room was vacant. Maybe someone checked in after I crashed. Then the woman screamed. Not like a startled scream, not like an argument getting heated. This was terror, pure animal terror, the kind of sound that makes your stomach drop and your skin go cold. I sat up fast, heart already hammering. The arguing had stopped. Now there was just banging. Heavy, rhythmic impacts against the wall we shared. Then crashing sounds, like furniture being thrown. The woman screamed again, and this time I could make out words. "Please, please, no, please!" Then, nothing. Complete silence. I was out of bed before I could think about it, my hands shaking as I grabbed my phone. I should have called the front desk, should have called 911. But something pulled me to that adjoining door instead. I pressed my ear against it, listening. Nothing. Not a sound. Not a breath. "Hey!" I shouted, pounding on the door. "You okay in there?" Silence. I tried the handle on my side, still locked, but as I stood there, hand on the knob, I heard something that made my blood freeze. A slow, heavy, dragging sound, like something being pulled across carpet. It moved from somewhere deep in the room towards the door, towards me. Then it stopped, right on the other side. I jerked my hand back like the metal had burned me. "Hello?" My voice cracked. That's when I noticed the gap at the bottom of the door. There's always that inch or two of space, right? I could see the light from room 15 underneath, and in that light, I saw liquid, dark liquid, spreading slowly under the door, soaking into the carpet on my side. I stumbled backward, nearly tripping over my own feet. At first, I thought it was blood. The dragging sound started again, moving away from the door now, back into the room. Then I heard something worse, a wet, thick sound, and a voice, low and male, mumbling something I couldn't understand. I ran to the room phone. My hands were shaking so bad I could barely dial 0. It rang and rang and rang 10 times, 15. No answer. The front desk was maybe 100 feet away. Where the hell was the clerk? I grabbed my room key and threw open my door to the parking lot. The cold night air hit me like a slap. I ran down the exterior corridor toward the office, my bare feet slapping on concrete. But when I passed room 15, I stopped. The door was open, not wide open, just ajar, maybe 6 inches, enough to see inside. The light was on. I could see part of the room, and it was empty, completely empty. No people, no furniture thrown around, no sign of any struggle at all. Just a neat, untouched motel room with that industrial carpet and basic furniture and nothing else. Except there were wet spots on the carpet, dark, spreading wet spots that caught the light. And in the back corner, near the bathroom, the maintenance hatch in the floor was open. Just a black square in the ground leading down into darkness. I should have run, should have kept going to the office, but something made me push that door open wider, made me step inside. "Hello?" My voice sounded too loud in the silence. The room smelled like mildew and something else, something metallic and wrong. I took another step. The wet spots on the carpet were right in front of me now. I knelt down, my heart pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears, and touched one. Water. Just water. Cold water soaking into the cheap carpet. Then from the maintenance hatch, I heard it again, that dragging sound, but closer now. Something being pulled through a tight space, coming up. I ran, didn't close the door, didn't look back, just ran. I pounded on the office door, shouting for the clerk. He opened it looking annoyed, half asleep. "Room 15, I gasped. "There's something. You need to call the police." He looked at me like I was insane. "Room 15's been vacant for 3 weeks. Nobody checked in tonight but you." "The door's open," I said. "There's water on the floor and there's a hatch." He sighed, grabbed a flashlight, and walked down with me. But when we got there, the door to room 15 was closed, locked. He opened it with his master key, and I watched as he swept the flashlight around the room. Dry carpet, closed maintenance hatch, everything in perfect order. "You sure you didn't just have a bad dream?" he asked. There was that smile again, like he knew something I didn't. I didn't answer, couldn't answer, because I knew what I'd heard, what I'd seen. The deputy showed up 20 minutes later, took my statement with that look cops get when they think you're wasting their time. Checked the room himself, found nothing. Told me old buildings make weird noises, that sound travels funny through walls, that the plumbing in these places can sound like voices if you're tired enough. "Old pipes," he said, shrugging, like that explained screaming, like that explained begging. I sat in my car the rest of the night with the doors locked, waiting for the sun. When dawn finally came, I checked out without a word and drove straight through Kansas City. Made it to my sister's rehearsal dinner looking like I hadn't slept in days, because I hadn't. I tried to forget about it. Tried to convince myself it was exhaustion, that I'd let my imagination run wild. Almost succeeded. 3 weeks later, I saw the headline. I was scrolling through news on my phone during lunch when it popped up. "Human remains discovered during Missouri motel renovation." I clicked it before I even processed why. The Moonlight Motel, they called it. Same place, same stretch of highway. They were doing renovations, tearing up floors in several rooms, and they found her. Found what was left of her, in the crawl space beneath room 15. They identified her through dental records. A woman named Margaret Chen who'd vanished 8 years earlier, last seen checking into that motel alone. The article said the investigation was ongoing, said there were signs of trauma, said the previous owner had died 2 years back and the place had changed hands twice since then. I read it 3 times, my lunch going cold in front of me. Then I read the comments. Someone had posted, "My cousin stayed there in 2019 and said he heard screaming from an empty room, thought he was going crazy." Another, "I heard banging through the walls. Clerk said the room was vacant." I closed my phone, sat there in the restaurant, surrounded by normal people eating normal lunches, and I understood. I hadn't imagined anything. I hadn't let exhaustion trick me. I had heard her, Margaret Chen. I had heard her last moments, her last words, her last terrified pleas. And that recording, whatever the hell it was, whatever echo of horror that place had trapped in its walls, it was still playing, every night, on repeat, for anyone unlucky enough to be listening. I heard her die, and I couldn't do a damn thing about it. At least when the sun came up, I could get in my car and drive away. I could leave. But David Butts, he wasn't so lucky. He was trapped with something that wouldn't stop. Story 2. Some sounds you can ignore. Some sounds follow you home. David S. Butts learned that the hard way in Indianapolis, 3 days after a conference that had already drained every ounce of energy he had left. He'd spent 72 hours in windowless hotel ballrooms listening to presentations about market optimization and supply chain efficiency, shaking hands with people whose names he forgot the second they walked away, surviving on conference coffee and those sad little sandwich wraps they called lunch. All he wanted was sleep, real sleep, the kind where you don't dream about quarterly reports. The motel off I-465 wasn't his first choice. Hell, it wasn't even his 10th choice. But his flight got delayed, then canceled, and by the time he accepted he'd be stuck in Indianapolis another night, every decent hotel within 20 miles was booked solid, some medical convention in town. So he ended up here, at a place that charged by the hour and had reviews that used words like adequate and didn't get murdered. He checked in at 11:30 p.m., so tired he could barely read the keycard sleeve. Room 226, second floor. The clerk, a kid who couldn't have been more than 22, handed it over without looking up from his phone. "Ice machine's out, just so you know." "Don't need ice," David muttered. "Just need a bed." He should have asked for a different room. The hallway on the second floor smelled like industrial cleaner trying to cover up something worse. His room was at the end, right next to the alcove where the ice and vending machines sat. The ice machine had a handwritten "out of order" sign taped to it, the paper yellowed and curling at the edges. How long it had been broken. The room was what he expected. Generic paintings, rough carpet, a bed that was either too soft or too hard depending on which way you laid. But it was quiet, and that's all that mattered. He was asleep before his head fully hit the pillow. The grinding woke him at 2:17 a.m. At first, in that confused space between sleep and consciousness, he thought it was his alarm. Then he thought it was construction outside. Then his brain caught up and he realized the sound was coming from right outside his door. The ice machine. A mechanical grinding, clunking rhythm, the whir of a motor, the crash and tumble of ice cubes hitting the dispenser tray. David laid there, staring at the ceiling, his exhausted brain trying to process this. The machine was broken. The sign said "out of order," so what the hell was he hearing? He threw off the covers and walked to the door, the carpet rough under his bare feet, pressed his ear against it. The sounds were clear now. Definitely the ice machine, running at full blast. He opened the door. The hallway was empty. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead, that cold institutional glow that makes everything look slightly unreal. And the ice machine sat there in its alcove, silent and dark, the out-of-order sign still taped to its front. Completely silent. David stepped into the hallway, frowning. He walked right up to the machine and put his hand on it. Cold metal. No vibration, no sound. Nothing. "What the hell?" he muttered. He stood there for a full minute listening. Silence. Just the buzz of the lights and the distant hum of the building's HVAC system. He went back to his room, closed the door, and climbed into bed. Probably just a dream. He'd been so tired, maybe he'd been hearing things in his sleep. Yeah, that made sense. Then, the second his head hit the pillow, it started again. Grinding, clunking, the mechanical symphony of an ice machine working overtime. David's eyes snapped open. His heart was suddenly racing, that spike of adrenaline that comes when something is very, very wrong, but you can't explain why. He got up, walked to the door, threw it open. Silence. The machine sat there, dark and dead. "You've got to be kidding me," he said aloud.
He walked right up to it this time, examined it closely. The power cord was unplugged, coiled up on the floor behind the unit. The dispenser chute was caked with dust. This thing hadn't run in months, maybe years. He stood there in the hallway, his exhaustion making everything feel slightly dreamlike, and tried to logic his way through this. Old building, weird acoustics. Maybe the sound was coming from somewhere else, traveling through the vents, and it just seemed like it was coming from right here. Yeah, that had to be it. He went back to his room, left the door cracked open this time, just an inch, so he could see the alcove, climbed into bed. The grinding started immediately. And this time, standing in the alcove, there was a man. David sat up so fast he nearly fell out of bed. His mouth went dry, his hands started shaking. The man was maybe 40, wearing a maintenance uniform, gray shirt, dark pants, name tag on his chest that David couldn't read from here. He was holding a white plastic ice bucket, the cheap kind motels give you, and he was filling it from the machine. The machine that wasn't running, the machine that was unplugged. But David could hear it, could hear the ice tumbling into the bucket, could hear the man humming softly to himself, some tune David didn't recognize. "Hey," David called out. His voice came out hoarse. "Hey, excuse me." The man didn't react, didn't turn, just kept filling his bucket, humming that same few notes over and over. David got out of bed and walked to the doorway. His legs felt weak, unsteady. "Hey, I'm talking to you." Nothing. The man's back was to him, shoulders relaxed, completely focused on his task. The ice machine's motor ground away, that mechanical rhythm drilling into David's skull. David stepped into the hallway, walked closer. He was maybe 10 feet away now, close enough to see the man's profile, the gray in his hair, the lines around his eyes. Close enough to smell motor oil and something else, something stale and wrong. "Sir," David said, louder now, "the machine's broken. It's not even plugged in." The man kept filling his bucket. The ice kept falling. The motor kept grinding. David reached out. His hand was shaking. He touched the man's shoulder. His hand went through. Not like touch of air, not like there was nothing there. It went through, the way your hand passes through water, meeting resistance but no solid form. And for just a second, just a fraction of a moment, David felt cold. A cold so deep and profound it made his bones ache. He jerked his hand back with a gasp. The man didn't react, didn't turn, didn't stop humming, just stood there, filling his ice bucket from a machine that wasn't running, trapped in a loop that never ended. David ran. He pounded down the stairs, nearly tripping, his breath coming in gasps. Burst into the lobby where the same kid was still sitting behind the desk, still staring at his phone. "There's someone up there," David gasped, "by the ice machine. I don't know what he is, but he's..." The clerk looked up, annoyed at being interrupted. "Sir, are you okay?" "No, I'm not okay. There's a man up there, and my hand went through him."
The kid's expression shifted from annoyed to concerned, the kind of concern you get when you think someone might be having a mental health crisis. "Have you been drinking, sir?" "What? No, come up there with me, you'll see him." The clerk sighed but stood up, grabbing his keys. They walked back upstairs together, the kid taking his time, clearly humoring what he thought was a drunk or confused guest. But when they got to the second floor, to the alcove where the ice machine sat, there was nothing. No man, no sound, just that dead, unplugged machine with its yellowed out-of-order sign. "I don't see anyone," the clerk said carefully. "He was right here. I saw him. I heard him. I touched—" He stopped, realized how insane he sounded. "The machine's been broken for 5 years, since before I even started working here. Nobody's used it. Nobody can use it." David stared at the alcove, stared at the empty space where the man had been standing. 5 years, he repeated quietly. "Look, if you need a different room—" "No." David's voice was hollow. "No, it's fine." He watched the clerk walk back downstairs. Then he stood there in the hallway, alone with the dead machine, and waited. At first, nothing. Just silence. Then, faint at first, but growing stronger, he heard it. The grinding, the clunking, the ice tumbling into a plastic bucket. And when he looked at the alcove, the man was back. Same position, same uniform, same bucket, filling it from a machine that couldn't run, humming that same fragment of melody, trapped in whatever hell this was. David didn't run this time, didn't call out, just stood there and watched as the man finished filling his bucket, turned and walked straight through the wall, disappeared like he'd never been there. The sound stopped. Then, after exactly 30 seconds, it started again, and the man was back in position, bucket in hand, starting the process over. A loop, an endless mechanical loop. David went back to his room, didn't even try to sleep, just sat on the bed with his phone, the screen glowing in the darkness, searching. Indianapolis Motel ice machine accident. Worker killed ice machine. Maintenance death ice dispenser. He found it at 4:47 a.m. Local news article from 2018. Local maintenance worker killed in tragic accident at Indianapolis Motel. The story was brief. Routine maintenance on an industrial ice machine. Something went wrong. The man, Donald J. Souza, age 41, had been crushed when the machine's internal mechanism malfunctioned, died at the scene. The machine was immediately decommissioned, never repaired. There was a photo with the article. Employee file photo, probably. The man was smiling, wearing the same gray uniform David had seen. The same face David had seen filling an ice bucket from a machine that killed him. David stared at the photo until his vision blurred. Then he read the article again. Then he sat there in the dark, listening to the grinding start up again right outside his door. That same mechanical rhythm, that same fragment of a tune being hummed over and over. Donald J. Souza was still filling his bucket, still doing his job, still trapped in those last moments, replaying them every 30 seconds for 5 years. Every single night. When dawn finally came, David checked out without explanation, drove straight to the airport and paid 3 times the normal rate for a same-day flight. Didn't care. He needed to be gone. But even now, months later, if it's quiet enough, if he's tired enough, he can still hear it. That grinding, that clunking, that humming, following him, always following him. At least David could put a name to the face. At least what he witnessed had a tragedy he could research and understand. John Lopez? He saw something that was never supposed to be seen. Story 3. This is the one with security footage, and that's what makes it terrifying. John M. Lopez wasn't supposed to be in Phoenix at all. His connecting flight from Denver to San Diego had been canceled. Mechanical issues, they said. The kind of vague airline explanation that means we don't know and we're not telling you. They offered a hotel voucher for a place near the airport, but John had done the math. The voucher covered maybe half the cost, and he'd still be stuck waiting 18 hours for the next available flight. So he rented a car instead. Figured he'd drive part of the way, stop somewhere in Arizona, get some sleep, finish the drive in the morning. Save time, save money. Easy. Except, nothing about that night turned out to be easy. He made it to the outskirts of Phoenix around midnight. The highway was empty, just him and the occasional semi, and the desert heat was still radiating off everything even though the sun had set hours ago. He took an exit that promised gas and food, found a cluster of businesses mostly dark for the night. The Desert Vista Motel had a vacancy sign glowing in green neon. The building was U-shaped, wrapped around a parking lot with a swimming pool in the center. Even at this hour, the pool was lit up, glowing turquoise in the darkness like some kind of beacon. The night clerk was a young guy, early 20s maybe, more interested in his phone than in John. Checked him in with barely a glance, swiped his credit card, handed over a key card. "Pool closes at 10, the clerk said without looking up, "but I don't really enforce it if you want to swim. Just keep it quiet." Room 118, ground floor, facing the pool. John dropped his bag on the bed and looked around. The room was actually nicer than he'd expected. Clean, modern, like they'd renovated recently. He changed into shorts and a t-shirt, thought about just going to sleep, but his body was still wired from the stress of the canceled flight and the long drive, and that pool looked perfect. He grabbed a towel from the bathroom and headed out. The air was still warm, that dry desert heat that makes you feel like you're breathing in an oven. The pool area was surrounded by a chain-link fence, a sign on the gate that said pool hours 8 a.m. to 10 p.m., but the gate was unlocked. Lounge chairs scattered around the perimeter, all of them empty. He was alone. John dropped his towel on a chair and tested the water with his foot. Perfect temperature. He slid in and started swimming lazy laps back and forth, enjoying the quiet, the way the water felt against his skin, the sound of it lapping against the sides. He was on maybe his fourth lap when he noticed her. A woman sitting in one of the lounge chairs near the deep end. She was wearing what looked like a dark dress, her hair wet like she'd just gotten out of the pool. John stopped at the shallow end, treading water, trying to figure out when she'd come out. He hadn't heard the gate, hadn't heard footsteps. She'd just appeared. "Hey," he called out. "Nice night for it, right?" She didn't respond, didn't even look at him, just sat there, facing the pool, completely still. John felt a prickle of unease but pushed it down. Maybe she had earbuds in. Maybe she just wanted to be left alone. He understood that. He kept swimming. When he came up for air at the end of the next lap, she was gone. John looked around confused. The lounge chair was empty. The gate hadn't made a sound. No wet footprints on the concrete. She'd just vanished. He floated there for a moment, scanning the area. The parking lot was quiet. The motel rooms dark except for a few with lights on. Nothing moved. "Okay, that's weird," he muttered to himself. He did 2 more laps and decided to call it. Pulled himself out of the pool and grabbed his towel. That's when he saw the wet footprints. They led from the pool's edge to the lounge chair where the woman had been sitting, and then they just stopped. Didn't continue to the gate or back to the pool, just ended at the chair like she'd evaporated. John stood there, dripping, staring at those footprints. They'd already started to fade in the dry air, but they'd definitely been there. He wrapped the towel around his shoulders and started walking toward his room, glancing back at the pool one more time. She was there again. Same lounge chair, same position, same dark dress, facing the water. John stopped cold. His heart kicked into a higher gear. "Hey," he called out louder this time. "You okay?" Nothing. She didn't move, didn't turn, just sat there like a statue. He walked back toward the pool fence, his wet feet slapping against the concrete. "Miss? Hello?" She stood up, slowly, like it took effort, and then she walked toward the edge of the pool. Not to the shallow end, not to the steps, straight to the deep end, where the water was maybe 8 feet down. "Hey, wait!" John started to say. She stepped off the edge. Not jumped, not dove, just stepped forward like she was walking down a staircase, fully clothed in that dark dress, and disappeared into the water. John ran to the fence. "Hey! Hey!" The water was still. No ripples, no bubbles, no struggle. Nothing. Just the calm surface of the pool, glowing turquoise under the lights. He yanked the gate open and jumped in without thinking, still wearing his towel. Dove down to where he'd seen her go under. The pool lights on the bottom made everything visible. Crystal clear water. Empty tile floor. She wasn't there. He surfaced, gasping, looked around frantically, dove down again, checking every corner, even though he could see the entire pool. It wasn't that big. There was nowhere to hide. Nothing. The pool was empty except for him. John pulled himself out, his hands shaking, his breath coming in short gasps. This wasn't possible. He'd seen her. She'd walked into the water right in front of him. People don't just vanish. He ran to the office, leaving wet footprints across the concrete, his heart pounding so hard he could feel it in his throat. Pounded on the door until the clerk opened it, looking annoyed. "There's someone in the pool," John gasped. "A woman. She went under and didn't come up." The clerk's expression shifted immediately. "What?" "The pool. She walked in and sank. We need to call 911. The clerk grabbed his phone and ran with him back to the pool. They stood at the edge, both of them looking down into the clear, lit water. Empty. "I don't see anyone," the clerk said, already dialing. "I saw her. She was sitting in that chair. Then she got up and walked into the water." The clerk pulled out his phone and opened an app. "This is the security camera feed," he said, showing John the screen. Black and white footage of the pool area, timestamp in the corner. John could see himself swimming, getting out, standing there with his towel, running back toward the office. No one else in the frame, just him, alone. "I don't understand," John whispered. The clerk watched the playback, scrubbing through the timeline. "How long have you been awake?" John tried to think. "I don't know. Since 6 this morning, I guess. That's almost 20 hours. The clerk looked at him carefully. "You drove here from Denver?" "Yeah." "Look, man, you're probably just exhausted. The mind does weird things when you're that tired, especially in an unfamiliar place. I know what I saw. I'm sure you think you did, but the camera doesn't lie. You were alone out here. Nobody else came to the pool tonight." John wanted to argue, but what could he say? The video showed he was alone. There were no wet footprints except his, no evidence anyone else had been there. "Go back to your room. Get some sleep. In the morning, this'll all make more sense." John nodded numbly and walked back to room 118. He stood in the shower for a long time, trying to warm up even though it wasn't cold. When he finally got into bed, he kept the TV on for noise. Couldn't close his eyes without seeing her walk into that water. Around 3 in the morning, he gave up on sleep and opened his laptop. Buried deep in the search results, he found it. A news article from 15 years ago, local section of the Phoenix newspaper. Woman drowns in motel pool. The story was brief. A guest at the Desert Vista Motel had been found dead in the pool. Joanne J. Bowman, 34 years old, visiting from California. She'd gone swimming alone late at night. Hotel staff found her body at the bottom of the pool the next morning. Police ruled it an accidental drowning. Possible alcohol involvement, though toxicology results were inconclusive. There was a photo with the article. A grainy black and white image, probably from a driver's license or work ID. A woman with dark hair, maybe in her 30s. John stared at that photo for a long time. He couldn't be completely sure. He'd only seen her at a distance in the dark, but the hair was the same, the build was the same, the way she held herself. He scrolled down to the comments section. Someone had posted 6 months ago, "Stayed here last year, saw someone by the pool after midnight. When I went to check, nobody was there. Felt wrong. Checked out early." Another comment from 4 months back, "Don't swim here at night, trust me." And one from 2 months ago, "I saw her too. Dark dress, wet hair. She was just sitting there, then she wasn't. The clerk said I was hallucinating from exhaustion, but I know what I saw." John closed his laptop, sat there in the dark, the TV still playing some infomercial he wasn't watching. The pool glowed through his window, that turquoise light casting strange shadows across the walls. Joanne J. Bowman had drowned in that pool 15 years ago, walked in alone, late at night, and never walked out. And she was still there, still walking to that edge, still stepping into the water every night, replaying those last moments over and over, trapped in whatever loop this was. And no camera would ever catch her. No security footage would ever show her face. She existed in that in-between space, visible to the exhausted, the vulnerable, the ones too tired to know better. John packed his stuff before dawn, checked out as soon as the morning clerk arrived, a different person who smiled and asked if he'd slept well. Fine, he lied. He drove straight through to San Diego, didn't stop except for gas, made it in just under 6 hours. Now, when he drives for work, he plans his routes carefully, adds 4 extra hours to his trips if he has to, books chain hotels days in advance, even if they cost more. Anything to avoid pulling off at some random exit, some forgotten motel with a vacancy sign glowing in the dark. Because some places hold on to their dead. The walls remember. The water keeps what it took. John still thinks about her sometimes, wonders if she knows what happened to her, wonders if she's trying to show people, trying to ask for help, or if she's just trapped in that moment, walking into water that killed her, sinking down into darkness over and over and over. He'll never know, and he'll never go back to find out. If you've made it this far, thank you for listening. If you've ever experienced something like this, heard screams from an empty room, seen someone who shouldn't exist, watched something impossible happen, you're not alone. The walls in old places remember things, and late at night, in forgotten motels along forgotten highways, they play them back for whoever's desperate or tired enough to witness it. Stay safe out there, and maybe think twice before you pull into that motel with the flickering sign and the vacancy light glowing in the dark. Because you never know what's still checking in, and you never know what never checked out.